Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word and to some news, specifically a look at Pirelli's findings following their investigation into last weekend's tyre failures. A quick word on the schedule that has been revealed for the two-day event at Imola which takes place later this season, and a couple of other stories I wanted to mention ahead of the 70th Anniversary Grand Prix which takes place this weekend. Firstly though, and as I'm sure you will remember, the closing stages of last weekend's British Grand Prix saw a number of drivers suffer punctures. That all led to question marks regarding the safety of the tyres, and with Pirelli set to bring compounds that were a step softer to the second race at Silverstone, it was rumoured that they may have to change their plans if the punctures were found to be down to a tyre issue rather than high wear or debris on track. However, following an investigation, Pirelli found that the reason for the punctures was down to a mixture of the high downforce loadings produced by the 2020 cars, as well as the extremely long stints run by the teams which led to the failures. A statement from Pirelli read, "The key reason is down to a set of individual race circumstances that led to an extremely long use of the second set of tyres. The second safety car period prompted nearly all the teams to anticipate their planned pit stop and so carry out a long final stint, around 40 laps, which is more than 3/4 of the total race length on one of the most demanding tracks on the calendar. Combined with the notably increased pace of the 2020 Formula 1 cars, this made the final laps of the British Grand Prix especially tough, as a consequence of the biggest forces ever seen on tyres generated by the fastest Formula 1 cars in history." Pirelli went on to add that the overall result was the most challenging operating conditions for tyres, and as a result led to the front left tyres being placed under maximum stress, meaning it was less protected from the extreme forces in play. It should also be noted that there was no mention in that statement about the reported debris on track as a result of Kimi Raikkonen's front wing failure, and whether or not that played any part in the late tyre blowouts. Now, despite the concerns about the tyres and indeed the expected higher temperatures, it has also been confirmed that teams will still be using the softer C2, C3 and C4 compounds for this weekend's 70th Anniversary Grand Prix. Now, Pirelli boss Mario Isola did explain his decision by saying that the length of the stints will have to be shorter because the compounds are, by definition, softer, and pointed to Romain Grosjean's C2 stint as an example. The Frenchman ran for 36 laps on that compound on Sunday, and his tyres were absolutely gone by the end of that stint, and Isola said that he struggled to see how they can run more than 30-something laps for the second Silverstone race. And just worth a reminder as well, if you're new to Formula 1, the C2 was the medium tyre last weekend and will be the hard tyre this weekend. Isola also added that the teams are very good at managing the tyres, so I cannot write that in stone, but looking at the softness of the compound, probably most of the teams will target two-stop strategies. Despite that though, there will still be some changes. So firstly, Pirelli will increase the minimum tyre pressures in a bid to reduce the stress on the construction, although at time of recording there has been no word on what those pressures will be. But as an example, the minimum pressures for last weekend's race were 25 psi for the front tyres and 21 psi for the rears. Secondly, it has been confirmed that the test of the 2021 Pirelli tyres that was originally set to take place during FP2 on Friday has been scrapped to allow the teams more track time to gather data on the softer tyres. However, the test is still set to go ahead next weekend in Barcelona. And the final change ahead of this weekend is actually a track change. Nope, they're not running it in reverse, but Silverstone bosses have announced that a new curb has been installed at the exit of Beckett's for this weekend's track action. Now, this decision was made as a result of how the drivers were exiting that sequence of corners, with many of them dipping a wheel into the grass and then running up onto the curb at Chapel, which put the tyres under added load as they moved onto the hanger straight. So to try and help prevent that going forward, a 23-metre section of curb with taper has been installed at the exit of turn 13. So there you go then. When it comes to the tyres, it's all set to go ahead as planned this weekend, and I'm actually glad they've come to that decision. I talk about the importance of safety all the time on this channel, so I completely understand the safety aspect and why they can't just have tyres blowing up left, right and centre. But there is a solution to that without having to change tyre compounds to the harder options, and it's very simple: pit more than once. Now, of course, teams don't want to spend any longer in the pit lane than they have to, and in fact, according to Mercedes, the total time lost for just driving through the pit lane without stopping is 22.8 seconds. So you're looking at about 24 to 25 seconds of lost time just to make a pit stop. It's pretty obvious why the teams don't want to be stopping 2 or 3 times a race and why they try and stretch these stints out. However, if they are genuinely concerned that these tyres won't last, then, well, to be frank, tough luck, you're just going to have to pit and put on some fresh tyres. And ultimately, it's probably going to cancel itself out anyway, because most teams, if not all of them, are going to be in pretty much exactly the same position. So if Mercedes stopped twice, then so probably a Red Bull, and so are everybody else. Therefore, it's not going to make that much of a difference if it's a multiple stop race, if you see what I'm getting at there. Unless, of course, there are mistakes in the pit stops. That's always a concern. And when it comes specifically to Mercedes, they could probably pit 6 times, stop to read the paper, have a chat and still win the race by 10 plus seconds. Perhaps a slight exaggeration there, but you get my point. There was some talk, or I suppose speculation really, of perhaps forcing the teams into a mandatory 2-stop race, but I don't really think that's necessary. Again, if the tyres can't do the stint, you're just going to have to pit. And I hope Pirelli perhaps err on the side of caution a little bit with their predicted tyre life this weekend too. If the teams are told a tyre will do 40 laps, that tyre should be able to do 40 laps and the teams are going to try and make it do 40 laps. That said, predictions can't take into account things like track conditions that change over the course of the weekend, or even things like aggressive curb usage. It's got to be a difficult thing to predict even with all that practice data they have access to. I guess we'll see this weekend what happens, but I expect at least a 2-stop race and a hell of a lot of tyre saving going on. Anyway, this was originally supposed to be a news roundup, but one story has dominated it, and to be fair, it has probably been the biggest talking point so far this week, for now at least. But there are a couple of other stories I want to mention super quickly ahead of this weekend, and by a couple, I actually mean 3. Firstly, F1 has confirmed the schedule for this season's race at Imola. Now, a few eyebrows were raised when the dates for the race were confirmed, as it showed the event taking place across just 2 days rather than the usual 3. Naturally, we all speculated about what that might mean for the Friday practice and whether or not we could see qualifying on Sunday. However, and I'd say somewhat surprisingly, there will be just one 90-minute practice session which will take place Saturday morning, with qualifying running on Saturday afternoon and the race as usual going ahead on Sunday. The reason I say it's surprising is because Formula 1 hasn't raced at Imola since 2006, and even though it feels like yesterday, it really wasn't. And so any data the teams have will be irrelevant, and so we could see a very busy Saturday morning. 90 minutes of practice is a big drop from the usual 4 hours we see. It also feels a little bit crazy and also very Formula 1 that we get 4 hours of practice at Barcelona where the teams also do 2 weeks of testing, but we only get 90 minutes at Imola, but there you go. One thing is for sure though, we could see quite a mix-up and a lot of unpredictability, especially if it rains Saturday morning and is dry for the rest of the weekend. One team though that may be fairly happy with that schedule are AlphaTauri, who conducted a shakedown at the track back in June. Now of course they won't have gathered a huge amount of data, but it is likely a lot more than the other teams have, and also more up to date than any other team on the grid has, so it's going to be a very interesting weekend, that's for sure. Valtteri Bottas has said that he will keep pushing and believing despite his title hopes taking a massive blow last time out. Again, as I'm sure you'll remember, the Finn was set to finish second to teammate Lewis Hamilton, and had he managed that, he would have been, depending on fastest laps, around 12 points behind the Brit in the Drivers' Championship. However, after dropping out of the points thanks to that late puncture, Bottas now sits a hefty 30 points off his teammates' tally. Bottas added that whilst the situation is not ideal and not something he can afford to have happening, the season isn't over yet and you just never know what will happen. It feels like a big ask though, doesn't it? Especially when you consider that we still don't know how long or how short this season will be. For me at least, Bottas really needs to beat Hamilton this weekend, otherwise that could well be the title done and dusted already. Although, as Bottas says, anything can still happen. It's a big weekend for him. And finally, Robert Kubica will be back behind the wheel of the Alfa Romeo for FP1 this weekend. The Pole, who has already made 2 practice appearances in 2020 as well as some good running during testing back in February, will be taking the place of Antonio Giovinazzi on Friday morning. The Pole said he was happy to be back behind the wheel, as I'm sure we can all understand, especially at Silverstone, and was focused on helping the team to develop the car further. So keep an eye on him on Friday. Also very interesting when you consider the rumours around Raikkonen and Giovinazzi's futures. Can he deliver some good lap times to put himself right in the frame for a drive? We'll see. That's pure speculation though, of course. I should add as well, before I go, that the FIA are hearing the Renault Racing Point protest today, but at time of recording anyway, there has been no word on a decision either way, but I will keep you posted. That is it for this video then, but I will be back soon with more content between now and Sunday. In the meantime though, don't forget you can of course follow me over on social media, and all of the links you need for that are in the description down below. But as ever, thank you for watching, and hopefully I will catch you again in the next one. Bye bye.